There's a foolish idea that is commonplace in the online left-wing media that perpetuates the unstated idea that we have to accept the Palestinians' views about their resistance because it's their country. These largely well-informed, clearly capable of research individuals don't question whether it might be improper conduct not to provide much needed information to people trapped in an open-air prison, which has been turned into an extermination quarter, where all the libraries and all the schools have been bombed. Which is to say, the online pro-Palestinian media is psychologically incapable, unwilling to understand the fundamentalist tripartite system, which is at the root of the power structure put together by Jeffing Corporation, Carnegie Mellon University, and Seattle Left to process genocide, past and present, from the 80s on. The fundamentalist tripartite system is easy to see in the Iran-Contra scam. Zionists sold weapons under the table for Reagan's guerrilla Christian militia to Iran so they could mine Nicaraguan harbors. The poor people of Latin America were hated by the guerrillas of the John Wayne crowd. They wanted to control them, so they called them communists and spread weapons and fascism in their ranks, leading to all sorts of massacres of innocent civilians in Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua. Evil innuendos come from Franklin Graham, calling one of what he characterizes as efficient at his duties anti-communist Contras. Hitler. That's what he calls him. And then he changes his name to Lazarus because he's back from the dead. A sort of shenanigan and weaselry is a Reich of the fundamentalist tripartite system. You would think people defending the Palestinians from genocide would be concerned about, because Nosferatu promoted Hamas, and Hamas gave him his pretext, and Egypt is helping, and that's not the only one. Azerbaijan, there's several, UAE, Jordan, the power structure around Saudi Arabia, the people who hated Arab Spring have been standing by watching. Iran hasn't done anything. They've absorbed all sorts of blows. Yemen has made a stink, which is commendable. But the fundamentalist tripartite system marches on. Why can't people get their hands on it, get the grip on it, understand that sin war signifies war on sin, just as Ronnie Zinsky, who attacked me as a child, was working with Reagan on the war on sin. Why can't people get their minds around that is because their gurus say no. Chomsky, Michael Foucault went and met with the Ayatollah about the time that the 444 Days crowd took custody of the American embassy and waited for Reagan to be sworn in to let them go. Jimmy C was out. Foucault met with the Ayatollah and then martyred himself to the first genocide attack. Why is that hard to understand? For one reason is because King Crimson was brokering ideas of Colin Powell. Patricia Fripp went on 60 Minutes with Colin Powell to strut her stuff. The man behind the weapons of mass destruction, who Christopher Hitchens outed as the man who tried to cover up for the My Lai massacre in Vietnam. Yep, the same Colin Powell. Man of the people, dancing with Coretta Scott King. How we mingle in America. King Crimson was selling the idea that there was soon to be another ice age. Tony Levin swore on his golden chalice that virginity proves rape, and Yoko Ono covered for Gail Carolyn Burston, a nom de guerre that is a homophone for Christian Armageddonism. Gay, ill, Christmas Carolyn bombs Burston. And the FBI looked at the evidence I gave them and said, that's pretty. I gave them copies of her letters that were laminated almost like a placemat. Can we keep this? They said to me in the Pittsburgh office back in early 90s. Never did anything whatsoever except to heckle her Two Virgins Pussy Ball game, which came from the mind of John Lennon. All of the evidence I've turned up makes what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, almost a crystalabra, a golden motif. Van Gogh's ear. Queerball did it to himself, they laugh, because they managed to hustle. They managed to hustle a child who they brutally implanted with a neuroplasm and then caressed. A man who was deaf and who they locked out of school, who they have now poisoned in the brain so severely that he has Parkinson's. And they say he did it to himself. The evidence shows that Reagan was behind the attack on JFK. It really is that simple. His attorneys had me in D.C. the day he claims he was shot. He was like, "Oh, you hit me. Oh, you hit me." And they gave me a brochure that says there's no such thing as objective reality, only what the jury believes. They didn't, by the way, kill John Lennon. They used him for You Only Live Twice, planning for which goes back to Fayum and the Italian futurists who were counterfeiters at Fayum, who introduced D.W. Griffith, whose acolyte Raoul Welch made Reagan's wartime films, full of pro-Axis encryptions, full of Hitler as Lazarus back from the dead, was meeting with Mussolini, thanks to Luigi Freddi and Gabriel D'Annunzio from Sarah Bernhardt's lover menagerie around Diaghilev. And yes, people who sent me that letter have a woman in Guatemala named Sarah Bernhardt. So the walrus was Paul and John Lennon. And they weren't going to leave it to chance that he would go out that night. The third dimensional aspect, the fourth dimensional aspect, is in the three-character arrangement. two of whom we know. Mark David Chapman, who was in on the genocide and took a life sentence as a martyr for the cause. John Lennon, who willingly stepped out. And Sean Straub, another Michael Foucault, who poisoned himself. Straub has the same letters S-T-R-U-B as B-U-R-S-T. Burson, Y-N, like New York. Boom, Straub. Strawberry fields forever. And the left would rather play spite and malice about someone they seduced, than fucked, than extorted, with all the snobbery of the National Security Agency, lining up to pussy whip a deaf man with a brain implant. That's how spectacular these spinner beanies from the so-called left be.